Welcome back to Crypto Nitro today with some really big news on Ethereum, so let's get right into it. This video is for educational purposes only. I'm not your financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own research for every investment you make. Welcome back everybody. Ethereum just shipped a major upgrade called Fusaka, and most of you guys, or most of us, I didn't even notice it myself until a few days ago. It changes something huge on the Ethereum chain, how pretty much Ethereum scales for layer 2s, how you can do cheap roll-up, kind of lower the fees, get it faster, and in general it upgrades the network to a really new standard, and yeah, pretty much pushes the nodes into huge data centers that can verify tons of data at the same time. So first, a quick translation. Fusaka is basically two upgrades shipped together, one on Ethereum's execution layer called Osaka and one on the consensus layer named Fulu, and then put together that gives you Fusaka. And the goal is simple. Ethereum wants to bring a new standard to their layer 2, while we have tons of layer 2s out there that are processing most user transactions. The big question for these chains is, how do we feed more data more cheaply without breaking decentralization and getting quick transactions without big fees? So the star of the update is pretty much the peer data availability sampling. Here's pretty much the problem that it solves. So layer 2s publish batches of transaction data to Ethereum using something called a blobs, and before Fusaka, a full node basically had to download and store all that blob data to be sure that it existed, to verify those transactions pretty much. But that doesn't scale well. More blobs mean more bandwidth, and that means fewer people can run nodes and fewer transactions can be processed. In the end, the fees goes up. The peer data availability sampling flips the model, and instead of every node downloading everything, nodes sample small pieces of that blob data, and if enough random samples are available across the network, you can be extremely confident that the full data is available. So imagine it like that the transactions get put together into a blob. We imagine that blob being a book with 500 pages. And the old way was that the nodes read all of those 500 pages and then say, yep, this blob exists, those transactions have been done. With the new upgrades, those nodes simply go ahead and check a bunch of random pages of the book, and you have tons of nodes obviously doing that sampling just a few pages of that book, and that all put together then can verify that the blob exists, that pretty much the transactions are being done. So in practice, this means each node can hold only a fraction of that blob data while the network still stays safe. That opens the door to much higher blob throughput over the time, which is what rollup needs to be consistently and have cheap fees. Okay, so the peer DAS makes it possible to scale those blobs, but Ethereum also needs a safe way to turn up the dial gradually. So that's where blob parameter only forks come in, often shorted to BPO forks. So the translation pretty much of that is that Ethereum can adjust blob limits without waiting for the next massive all-in upgrade. So instead of a big fork per day where everything changes, Ethereum can do smaller targeted parameter updates to increase the blob capacity step by step as the network proves it can handle it. Whenever Ethereum lowers those fees and makes it cheaper, you have a lot of people that ask, if transactions are cheaper, doesn't Ethereum burn less? Doesn't the base layer capture less value? And Fusaka addresses that part as well with a blob fee mechanism that prevents blob fees from falling to essentially free levels during quiet periods. In English, rollups still pay economic rent for using Ethereum as a data availability layer, even when the demand isn't spiking. So the idea pretty much is more rollup activity, more blob usage, more consistent value flowing back to Ethereum's base layer economics. So let's make this practical. If you're a normal user, you probably won't feel Fusaka on layer 1 directly. What you should feel over time is that your favorite Ethereum apps on layer 2 get cheaper, smoother, more consistent, especially during busy periods. If you're building apps, it means that cheaper, more abundant data for a rollup is a big deal, can unlock better UX, more on-chain activity, and more apps that don't feel like every click costs money. If you run nodes to or validate, the PDAS is designed to help Ethereum scale without forcing node operators to constantly upgrade hardware, bandwidth just to keep up. So it's a win-win-win on all sides. So pretty much Fusaka is Ethereum doubling down on its strategy, not one chain that does everything, but Ethereum as a secure settlement layer with rollups as the execution engine. And now the network is upgrading the plumbing to push that model further. Does that guarantee anything about the price? No, it doesn't, but as a technology story, it's a major step, more scalable data, lower L2 cost, and design choices aimed to keeping participation accessible. So in the long run, Ethereum stays relevant pretty much with those upgrades. It's a huge upgrade in Ethereum, pretty much one of the biggest one that we've seen in the last couple of years, and that makes sure that Ethereum stays up to date, stays with the trend. And I mean, Ethereum is the #2 blockchain out there. It's currently at $3,000, as you can see. Back in August, I think it was, where it set a new all-time high. We have a market cap of $357 billion with a volume in the last 24 hours of 10 billion, which is actually quite low for Ethereum. But yeah, definitely a huge step for Ethereum that they took here, and we can definitely see some big steps here in the future coming if they keep up with updates like that. I mean, if you want to check it out yourself, there's tons of data out there, tons of news articles, tons of videos that explain it in more detail. If you want us to do another video in more detail, let us know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and I see all of you in our next video. Take care, guys. Bye bye.